Hi, Nelly. Thank you very much for making your time and being here on the show. I'm really, really excited to see you and to hear from you and to draw from your experience, more importantly, to see how much of your knowledge we can maximize today. So I am super excited to have you here. And for everyone joining, of course, this is another episode of the podcast How to Product, where we talk about the product management space and everything that revolves around product space, whether you're a product designer, a product manager, scrum master, an enthusiast in the product space, and we keep it real. So there's no theory here. And I'm
Yes.
very, very certain that Nelly has tons of experience to share with us. So, Nelly, take it away. Can we get to know you a bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I love your podcast. I've been following you. I know you've just launched, and I think that you're
Yeah.
going in the right direction. As I love what you said here, it's not about just the theory, because the theory doesn't always match what we see when we get in the on the ground, in the nitty-gritty
Mm,
details, and having the ability to kind of adjust, use the theory, and be real.
be real.
It's what is important. So I really hope that this session, I might share with you things that you might think like, what? Should I really do this? But it was me being real, right?
True,
So this
true.
is what it's going to be about.
I love that.
So yeah, just a bit about myself. I'm Naili Makangu. I run a company called Athena Leaders.
Mm,
And I believe in helping startups and small businesses to deliver projects on time and on budget and to launch products. I love this idea of supporting people that have a big dream, they want to build something. And then whilst we're in there, we play on the way to success, really.
mm,
I work a lot, whether it's jumping in the team, as a technical project manager, product manager, a CPO, head of product, whatever hat they want to give me. Essentially, I just help them fix problems where they are as they are growing.
mm,
And I guess this is all of this experience that I'm going to bring in as I work with you all the way from when I first started as a software engineer, in fact,
wow.
at Siemens Industry Software, starting leading large projects, program management, and into then startups until I start my business. So
Wow.
yes, there's quite a lot of things that I can talk about the subject, but I will, yes, I just kind of want to start with a bit of an introduction there.
And thank you very much, Nelly. And I think you maybe deliberately or just omitted the part where you run a podcast. So, guys, Nelly has a podcast, and it is super amazing what she's doing, really, and how much she's supporting people, especially in the startup ecosystem, basically. And it's very thrilling for me to have you here on the show because from my introduction, guys, you could tell that she has a lot to say and she has seen a lot, she has experienced a lot, she has diverse set of skills, and I think she just has this. She's the repository of this um, startup products, anything in that space kind of knowledge, So I feel today we're going to just benefit from all of that. And if you have questions, please do drop them while the conversation is ongoing so that we can attend to them in due course. So that was a powerful introduction, Nelly. And yeah, so talking about stakeholders, I mean, a lot of people do not really know what stakeholders are. Starting out,
Yes.
it's like this buzzword, stakeholder, stakeholder, stakeholder. So who would you say is a stakeholder or who are stakeholders? And if you wouldn't mind me adding to that question is
Mhm.
if you can maybe give categories or grouping or types or kinds of stakeholders.
Mhm.
So yeah, who are stakeholders and what kinds or types of stakeholders do we have?
Okay. So when you think about stakeholders, first of all, those are the people that will be either influenced or will be using your project. Sometimes when people start thinking about a stakeholder for a project, so when I use the word project, I also talk about, product, you're building a product, and you're thinking about who are your stakeholders, you need to go beyond the people you communicate with every single day, right? It's really up to you. I think the best thing to do when you're first starting a project is to have a list. I usually write it down somewhere, like a spreadsheet or whatever it is, but write down the list of the people you think will either be part of the project or the product team. So those one will be anyone who will be helping you are part of the team. So that whether they are the software engineers, whether they are the developers, whether they
Mm.
are product managers, all of those people
Yeah.
are already your stakeholders. Then you want to know, obviously, the people I don't think you will forget because they won't let you forget who's paying for it. So those are usually management, the people who've
Mm.
asked you to work on that. So they are the people who are really invested to see that succeed. But don't stop just there. Think about also adding the line managers of people who are working on your project or on your product team or your Scrum team if you are doing agile.
Right.
Why? Because those people will have a say, whether it's allocation of resources, whether it's supporting the well-being of the people who are on your project. So the more you are keeping them informed and you
Mm.
bear them in mind as a stakeholder, the better your life is going to be.
Hmm.
Then we start looking at the people who are going to be using your product. So that could be clients if you are externally facing, or that could be other departments if you're working on something that will be internally facing. You also need to think about who else will be impacted by this, right?
Wow.
And that
Yeah.
could be so many other things you don't think about. So, for example, I work on system. I was working on the projects where, by the time we launch, we needed to bear in mind how the support team was going to help start getting calls from the clients.
Okay.
Although the support team might not have a lot to do in your projects, for most of it, they need to be aware. And in fact, if you're doing agile, you, as a product manager, you will need to speak to them anyway to understand how they are currently supporting clients and bring them back on board. Sometimes I find that the support team gets brought in on
Mm.
projects at the very last minute,
Yep.
which I think is a mistake.
Yeah.
So bearing that in mind on your stakeholder list will make sure that as a minimum, you keep them as an FYI.
Mm.
So also think about anybody else that could slightly be impacted based on the change that you are bringing. So
Wow.
when you have all those people, then you need to think about, as you talk about, you ask about the categories, right? So some of the key categories will be who needs to have, as much detailed information. So
Mm-hmm.
those are people who will be decision makers or people who are part of the team. If you are looking at the decision makers in terms of the people who are paying for this, how often do they need to be updated? So as part of your spreadsheet, I always put that as well. Some
Okay.
people might want to have a weekly information,
Mm.
a weekly update. They just
Yep.
want high level information. So people who might be affected in the future, you start thinking about once we launch or we're getting closer to launch, yes, we need to start getting them on board. But if you already know it now, how can you get them excited about what you are working on,
Mm.
especially if it's going to bring a lot of change, so that you can even update them once a month. So you need to think a little bit about the people who have a key voice that will really affect your projects, the people who just FYI, let me know what's going on. Please don't
Yeah.
forget me. And the people that will be working in there as well.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. Sometimes I've always thought that stakeholders are like the people that will be working on your project. I think that was how I started out. And then as we
Mm-hmm.
kept going in that space, I started realizing exactly what you said. There are people that are impacted directly or indirectly. And
Yeah.
you want to be able to bring all of these people early on the project so that not like you're bringing the support team at the dying minute and then they are going like, what's going on? How do I even fit in here? So I need a
Mm-hmm.
backstory. And the other thing that you said that really struck me is that you need to be able to know how much detail or granularity of information you need to share with what stakeholder, because there are people that can get put off if you keep giving them daily updates. There are people that just need a
Yes.
quarterly update to know on a high
Mm-hmm.
level what has been the progress on this project. So being able to, so I can relate to what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
because it has happened to me. I've sort of lumped in, I was working somewhere and I sort of lumped all of my stakeholders into one category and I kept
Mm.
giving them updates at the same time. And then you
Yeah.
keep getting bad feedback saying, "Oh no, we don't even need, why this is a spam. This is a, like, you're constituting a nuisance to them basically. They don't need those information." Uh
And you know what happens next, right? The
mm,
moment you're going to send them key information that is actually useful to them, they
yep,
won't read it. Then
true.
they come back to you and say, "Oh, you didn't tell us that." But
Because they are used to, oh, it's him again, and they push it to the,
exactly.
it's just something. It's just something. I think that's very important so that key information is not lost in the noise. So yeah, I think talking about stakeholders and those categories and how to pass information across to them, have you, in your experience, had a
Mm.
situation where a stakeholder was overly difficult to handle or to speak with, like or bring on a project, or they are just being um unreasonable or unrealistic with their demands? Have you had that? I'm sure you have, but maybe.
Yes, in fact, I'm going to share with you one. I've got quite a few stories on that, but the
Ah,
first one I will share with you because I think there's a lot of learnings that could be applied for the second scenario if you have time to go into that. I was brought on a project, and in fact, one of the first messages that the person brought me in told me was, I need you to transform this organization or this project, just like you did other organization in the past, because I used to do that a lot for the community, nonprofit, and things like that. We really need this project has been going on for over a year, right? So it's kind of a startup scaling up very quickly. They're starting having clients. They bought these clients that wanted a product that kind of matched what they had, but there was a lot of personalization being done. And
mm,
being in a world where you're scaling up very quickly, resources is a problem. You're now starting to have two branches of your product. One, the normal one, as you and I love it. That's the
mm,
standard one. But of course, we know that life, again, real life, you sometimes have a branch out of what you initially started. And now you have this issue of the clients who want this particular product. We need to build that, but we have limited resources from the engineers, the people on the project team that are part of the delivery team, and so on.
mm.
So when I started, it was really tense situation here. Imagine being delayed by over 1 year, and just as if that wasn't bad enough, that projects for the client was only one little aspect of a larger program that they were running.
Wow.
So because they were delayed by a year, internally for them as well, they're starting to either lose credibility and their lives was much harder. So you
Mm,
can see how the level of conflict and the level of pressure we were under, because that makes sense. So when I jumped on the project, I started there, and the first question is kind of saying, thinking, where do I start? And how bad is this? And
mm,
then what we need to do to start looking into different things.
wow.
So the first thing I did, and of course, I always say, whether you are new on the project or whenever you see that there's a lot of conflict, first listen.
Mm,
I first did, that stakeholder map, and then I'm starting listening. So what do I listen for? First, the frustrations, obviously, you learn more about why people are frustrating.
yeah,
You listen for the emotions. And whilst you listen to the emotion, always go back to the root cause of the problem.
exactly.
When I run workshops on conflict for teams, especially technical teams, I always say that there is a conflict curves. When the conflict is at the beginning, whether you disagree, we think a lot about what just happened, what is the problem here. But the longer the conflict goes, we
Mm,
start getting so frustrated that it becomes like, oh, I don't like working with you because
yep.
you always do things like this. you know, you're
Yeah,
always late. I'm like, okay, are we talking about me being late now? Or are we talking about me being late all over? What does it actually mean, right? I
true,
can't help that you always late statement. But
true.
if you go in a complex situation and say, at this particular milestone, we were late. How can we fix this to make sure that the next milestone we're not late?
Mm,
That's a different agreement. So
mm,
when I listen to people, I try to listen for the frustration and then ask them questions to really start going down to what is the actual root cause and the actual problem that they are facing, because that is really what we need to start looking into.
yeah.
The second thing I listen for is what I call understanding people's map of the world, right? So that will include figuring out what their personality type is, what the culture is.
Mm,
You won't believe that one of the biggest problems that was easy for me to fix anyway, but for most people didn't realize, was that the problem was also caused by two different cultures working together. So on one side, the clients were based in Spain, and then the development team were based in the UK.
uh,
So when you start thinking about the culture, there's this aspect of British people tend to speak and slow down, wait. Spanish people, they go and go and go and go.
Yeah.
So when you have two different culture, and when they used to see the stakeholder going like, oh my God, this is late, I want this, I want this, I want that.
Yeah.
For them, that was orders. If they want this and they want this, they want this. They change the requirements.
Mm.
Next meeting, he will come in and go like, oh, but we could have done this, we could have done this. And they go back and change. So things were always late because they never really realized that he was just being passionate and wanting to help. So when I got on the project, and because I know about the culture, and I saw him how he talked, and I understood how he talked about his kid. Even when he talked about his kid, he always looks like he's like shouting
Frustrated.
and
Yeah.
angry, but he's actually telling me about the great things his kid has done. So I
True.
realized that is his style of speaking, and it matches the Spanish culture more than the English culture. So what I did, and I was like, okay, so by the way, those are the requirements. I'm going to cut this out because we need to kind of tighten the scope, deliver this, and then we can go forward.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I don't mind. I'm like, why didn't you tell them before? And for him in his mind, it's like, I never asked them to do it. I suggested. And,
But the
so
way
this
he
is why,
presented it.
exactly. So this is why sometimes when there's a lot of pressure, and especially when there's the scope creep, I love to kind of going back to really understanding what are people thinking, right? When you're understanding their personality types, the differences that we have in culture, their values, the experiences. Is there something happening internally? Why is this feature that we don't want to do now for whatever reason? Why is it so important? When you start asking this question and building relationship, you might realize that maybe the job is on the line, or maybe they overpromise this. So the question is, how can we help you? If you've promised it, how can you help you solve that particular problem so that you can allow us to kind of go back on track with the project? So for me, listening and really creating, as I talk about a spreadsheet where I put people's name, how much information, if I know something specific about them, especially, I train a lot on personality types, and I absolutely love this. And I can pick up based on people's words, the way they send me emails. I put it there because I think that is understanding people and being able to wonder, what is it? What is a win for them? What worries them can really help you get you untangled when you're dealing with a difficult project.
Wow, wow, that's a lot. Like, when you said something about listening, I think a lot of the frustration that comes with stakeholders is that they want to be heard, basically. And they want to
Yes.
be heard and be heard right. Sometimes it'll be
Mhm.
like, I'm saying this and you're hearing this. Can you listen to what I'm saying? And then you keep getting friction. In my past place of work, I worked with some Lebanese, and just like what you said with the Spanish folks, these guys have a way of projecting strongly, even if they are just being cutters or they are just telling you
Mhm.
something in a subtle manner. It sounds as though they are aggressive or they are angry at you or they are frustrated. So when I first got into the job, I was like, why is my boss always angry at me? Why? I did not realize that he was just being a Lebanese, basically, because that's how they speak.
Mhm.
And given the tonality or the cadences of their language structure, it's just okay for them to project, to shout
Mhm.
and project what they are saying, because otherwise it will feel like you're not getting them. And then you work with some British people and you see how calm and collected they are, with all of the cutscenes
Mhm.
and everything, and you'd be like, is this person overly lenient? So how do I balance this? I think for you, it's what you are now saying borders around something around emotional intelligence, understanding
Yeah.
personality types, right? And that would
Mhm.
really, really help. But if you come to a point where,
Mhm.
even though you've understood personality type and you've managed to listen to the
Mhm.
stakeholders
Yeah.
to understand the frustration rather than the person so that you can deal with the issue, but you're realizing that it is not just within the frustration or the issue that is causing that difficulty, but the person in their own self are just trying to sort of make your work counterfeit or just do something to frustrate your effort. How do you handle that? It could be for any reason that they are doing that, but
Mhm.
if you are
Yeah.
in that scenario, if you have ever been, that would be better for you to tell us how you managed to wiggle your way out of it. But if you haven't,
Mhm.
from your wealth of experience, how would you
Mhm.
advise someone to handle that case?
Yes, I mean, it can be quite tough. And the first thing I would say, first, you need to develop a tough skin. I mean, if you are a product manager, that's the emotional intelligence that we've already talked about, all those skill sets, the soft skills are really, really important. And having a tough skin as well, just knowing that it's not just whatever that person might say, don't take everything personally, because if you do, you're going to burn out very quickly. And in fact, when I think I started my business, it was on the first few thing I did. It was really interesting, the project. I was asked by a company to look into why they've been running so many product agile teams, but they were not delivering things. There was no real roadmap, and the roadmap only had one thing. That's what they're going to deliver, and you don't know how and when. And it was already June when I started going into them and understanding the amount of project that they were running. And the first thing was, wow, you have more productive managers that you have development teams. How is that even possible? Before we even go into the technicalities of solving that, one of the directors, I had quite a lot of issues with her, because her style of management was, you do as I say, and if you don't agree with me, I'm not particularly interested to know. So what tends to happen in those kind of cultures is that even if the team, they already know that we are going down the wrong path, they won't say anything. Or maybe they will voice it to their team, but they don't share it with others. Because I mean, it was June. There was at least 4 products that were meant to be launched in September. You don't need to be a rocket science, just without even looking at anything. I just told them that's impossible. You are rebranding the company, which requires marketing, and you have 4 products to launch, which requires marketing for the product marketing. And you have your UX sitting in marketing when they should be sitting in product with marketing guidance. That's never going to work. So, but then how do you go to someone who's being used, especially because I just jumped in, right? My job was like, go and fix this. And how do you speak to someone who, despite the best interest, they have this personality, and they really, I won't say vicious, but they can attack you openly. And it was quite funny because I identified her very early on, and I decided that I'm going to do my job and I will slowly reel her in. And I find that people like that, you need to kind of push back past them and start showing results to start convincing them to take it seriously. Otherwise, it's all about them and their rights. So the first thing I did was to get the product team together, all the product managers, and we sat there doing, what is wrong? You must have known that this was going to happen. What is in the culture? Okay, what is about the planning? I look at their plans, I look at the roadmap, and I started having sessions with them to start working on with each product manager, each product. How do we replan that, remap this? What are our blockers, so that I can present to the C-suite, so that to say, September not going to happen. Let's see which one of those products I can salvage so that we can launch, right? So that's the first thing. But of course, once I've done that, again, stakeholder management, I sent an email to the C-suite where that woman was, of course, the director of marketing, she was there. And I sent an email, and I kid you not, bearing in mind all of the work that I've done, explaining the frustration of the team, how we wanted to move forward. Her feedback was, oh, I don't like your tone of voice.
What?
Yes. And I kid you not, I had the CEO reply to that email saying, oh, it's great. Thank you for this. I'm really excited. I had the director of sales reply to that email saying, I can't believe you've done this. And it's only been about a week. I know you're still working on the plan, but my team is so frustrated not knowing what to sell. At least I can see that slowly we're going to start getting information. And her message has nothing to do with everything I've done. It was just that I need to work on my tone of voice because it didn't match the company. So this is when, you kind of need to judge. This message could have been a reply to me, but it was a reply to all. So at that point, I replied and apologized and said, oh, don't worry. I'm just new in this company and I'm mimicking your tone of voice. In the future, I will manage. Again, humility. Like I said, tough skin. I don't want to make it about me. Did I make a mistake? Potentially. But in the biggest, when you think about this, what was at stake, right? They were losing a lot of money. I was thinking about how can I stop them from spending 50 grand on the project, or 50,000 pounds on a project that they didn't need, because there was no way it's going to be launched, but they wanted to sign a contract about that. I'm like, no, you can't sign this. And you come and tell me about the tone of voice. So then, so then I thought, okay,
ridiculous.
If I can't influence her directly, how can I influence the people around her to see the change? So I started with my team, getting them to do things better. and owning the aspect of the work that should have been done the right way and the communication with marketing, which I know she had a big part to play with it, but I also believe that as a product team, we should have done it better. So I own that, got my team together, replan, starting again, how do we communicate, start sending messages across, start thinking about, okay, what are the issues that we have with marketing? UX is slowing us down. It makes sense. We need to have UX on our side. So I'm going to speak to the CEO and then see how we can recruit internally. So we kind of looked at all of those areas where we knew that marketing, even just content writing, that was another thing. Why does content writing for the product need to sit on marketing? They wanted to make sure that we have the right tone of voice. Fine. But how about we get our own content writing, because their content writer was busy rebranding everything that the company had externally for the last over 15 years or 20 years, right?
Wow.
So we needed a content writer on our side. But then again, what is the win-win? So once I got all of this information on how can we help marketing, I sat down with her, I invited her at the meeting, I brought her team along. And I wanted this to be an open discussion so that her team could see that we are not going there to judge you for what you've done wrong, but we are there to own up on what we could have done differently, right? Before, so that we can start changing the relationship. And again, whenever you are dealing with difficult people, I always try to avoid pointing the finger at what they've done. I will still point the finger, but not in terms of what you've done wrong, but this is the situation. Like I've said, not the emotion, not the person. This is the situation where we are in. How can we fix this? So I took that as a case study. Wow. So I went back to the team and they loved the idea of, we discussed, with their UX on their side. It says, okay, what are your concerns? A win-win for us would be to have the ability to meet our Scrum plans, our cycle, without having to worry whether the UX design will be done or not. And the way we can do that is by having someone on our side. And their worries is that you might, because they are rebranding, they want to make sure that anything we build or we're changing, yes, that's fine. How about we do the work on our side and then you guys just do an approval? That's cut down the time. So again, it goes back to the negotiation and the win-win, where rather than saying, oh my God, why is it that you always want to know everything? Did I believe that they needed to review everything? Possibly no, but I was happy to compromise so that they feel like they have control. We know we're moving forward. And then when they start seeing the results, seeing that our UX is doing things the right way, they might turn around and say, oh, by the way, we're not going to review it. We don't need to review everything, right? But we started in a position where there was no trust. So if I had gone and says, I don't think you guys need to review everything, that would have caused more problems. So you need to think about, win-win situation where you might not get exactly what you want, but being able to compromise so that the other person feel comfortable, start building trust, and then you go up a level. And that's what we did. Wow. Unfortunately, it got to the point where, the great thing was the marketing team was so relieved. They loved the approach. They love what we were doing. We replanned a lot of things together. It was quite funny because I was challenging the marketing team's plans. So every time they says, oh, guys, we can get it done for you in 2 weeks. I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. It says, why? Well, because in 2 weeks, I know that you guys are working on this part of the website and then this part of the website, which means that you won't be able to do anything on our side. And then they go like, oh, that's true. So rather than seeing it as us against them, so product versus marketing, they felt like, oh my God, we are in a planning session and we are all looking after each other. So that was great and really improved the relationship. Now, sometimes, again, going back to very tough people, you can do everything, you can be the loveliest person, but there are some people, if they don't want to change, they don't. They start losing the sense of, oh my God, okay, Naile's doing a good job here, what can I do? So I sent out an email with deadlines and things like that, just an update. And she replied to all and saying that, and then she started questioning a lot of the things that has nothing to do with marketing, is product related. And she starts questioning it and says, why is she doing X, Y, Z and not, this is completely unacceptable. We should have discussed this before. So I went back to her and that said, and that again was another undermining me, because the email had marketing team and product team.
Wow.
So imagine that we had this beautiful meeting where we started getting together.
Yeah.
I started noticing a change in the relationship that the marketing team had with product team.
Yeah.
At the people level, they started talking a lot more. They were happier. They even, if they had a problem, they used to come in. Marketing will speak to the product people. The product people will speak to me so that I can speak to the managers. That's how
Mm.
good they
Wow.
liked me, right?
Yeah.
But then she sent that email trying to undermine me, and one of my team member completely, because he was really rude. I mean, it wasn't even rude because of culture differences. This was just plain
Plain
rude, right?
rude.
Because she
Wow.
wasn't in Spanish, so it was just rude. So I got the email and I thought, okay, either the gloves goes off or I just, have a chocolate to just calm down because this is just getting out of the way. So I thought there are situations where you need to, when you have people with the situation, you cannot just say this is how they are, because that's how she is.
Mm.
She attacks people directly. But if I keep on giving her the excuse, she will never change,
Mm.
and my team will never learn to stand up to people like that. So I send a message and says, okay, I appreciate you have some concern, but I understand that you are a director in this company and I'm head of product. But first of all, I report to the CEO directly. I don't even report to the director of marketing. And quite frankly, this conversation is between two heads of departments, and we shouldn't have this kind of discussions. And your criticism or feedback, you should have come to me directly and do not involve my teams.
Everyone. Yep.
So in the future, you have any problems with something I've done or something, my approach, and we need to solve this, the two of us, so that we make sure that our teams are not conflicted and
Mm-hmm.
continue to work together. That was it. That email was a response to all.
Wow.
Then the next email was directly to her and says, can we have a call so that we can discuss this, because I think it's getting out of hand. I knew that the feedback was not about my work. It was about just the
Yeah.
fact that she was either feeling stressed, maybe it was part
Mm.
of her life, or I was undermining her because she felt like she lost control of the
Yeah.
product team. So the second aspect was, it wasn't comfortable for me. I can say that and laugh now, but it was like, oh my God, this woman. I had to have the conversation. So again, going back to how do you set up conflict discussions, because you cannot just avoid it. We did
Mm.
that conflict discussion. We tried to have a chat, and she didn't even want to open up. And it went all the way to getting HR involved to have a mediation. So we had
Wow.
HR there and me and her, because she just didn't want to be in the same room as me.
Wow.
And I thought that is fine. Sometimes you need to break things to start putting
Mm.
them back together the
True.
right way.
True.
And I did all of the nice thing, the gentle thing, and I got to the point where this rock, I tried to polish all around it. Now I have to go straight.
Yeah. Head on.
And yeah, and we did. And after that meeting, especially because we got HR involved, and for me, it wasn't just what I was doing. I felt like I needed to do this so that other head of department that was scared of her could
Yeah.
see that this is not on. This is not how we want to work in this
Meant to
company.
be.
This is not
Yeah.
the culture that we want.
Yeah.
And my team to see the same, and even her team. Some of them are really, really, they start messaging my team and says, oh my God, I'm glad Naile's here. Things are
Mm.
much better. Do you guys have a spot in your department so that we can switch over? I'm like, oh, I don't know if that helps me. But it's not comfortable. But yes, as much as I always try to avoid that level of high conflict and mediation,
Mm.
but sometimes with some people, it's the right thing to
To
do
do.
so that
Yeah.
you can break through. And then when they realize that this is what we are going to be from now on, they can choose to jump and stay with us and start working a different way. Or if they want to leave, that's their choice as well.
Wow. That's a lot to hold down. I mean, you've said so much, and a few things talk very strongly with me, one of which is the way you started showing competence, because some of these people can be very difficult. They can attack your person, attack whatever you're doing, but every other person that is seeing how competent you are in what you're doing and they know that you're being thoughtful, they would be able to tell for a fact that the problem is not from you, the problem is not the
Yeah.
situation itself, it's just that the other person is being difficult, because clearly they can see how well you're handling the thing and managing it. And
Mm-hmm.
then being able to negotiate and compromise, you know,
Yeah.
and being able to look at the situation itself rather than looking at the person and looking at how best do we compromise to reach a point where we can work together. I think that's very important. And
Yeah.
the last point is centered around what you just said now about there are times when you need to go head on, really, even
Yeah.
when you've done everything possible. There are times you need to just come on, stand up to this person, and in a more logical way, because I love the way you composed your email. It sounded logical, but it was not undertoned in a sense, because you were also saying that this
Mhm.
thing she has done was wrong. You were
Yeah.
addressing the problem and also being logical and diplomatic about it. That's I think that's super emotional intelligence, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just talking about that, I mean, do you think there will come a point where someone is just outright difficult that you think you just need to write this person off? You can't do anything about them. There's no conflict meeting, there's no conflict resolution, there's no mediation. Whatsoever technique you can imagine has been exhausted, yet this person is still proving difficult. Do you think there's ever that point where you need to write someone off and just move on with your life or do something else?
Oh, well, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I would have done that a long time ago. But unfortunately, it's not always that simple. It
Mm,
depends on your role and how high up you are in the company. As a product manager, if you get into that situation, whether you're head of product or whatever your rank in the company is, sometimes you're stuck because
mm,
you don't have the power to remove them from the company. It got to a point where when that behavior was identified, especially the way I tackled it, it became very clear to the senior leadership
mm,
that there is something that needs to go beyond just having a chat with her. All
mm,
right, there is something that this is something where the manager of that person needs to take charge
mm,
and do what they need to do. So that could be whether they decide to put them on performance review, give them feedback, fire them, whatever it is. I don't have the power unless I was talking about someone, let's say a product manager managing. Yes, I could do the performance review myself. I could let them know that I fired them or just fire them and
yeah,
work their notice period and all of that. But when it comes to someone external, you have no power
over.
over them.
Mm,
I always believe that you kind of need to still find a way to do the dance with it,
mm,
because, like I've said, if you focus on doing the right thing, if you focus on making sure that you always show results and progress,
mm,
despite the very difficult type collision, and if you focus on positively influencing people around you, regardless of the team, that person will feel trapped and management will see that, right, things are getting better.
mm,
This team is happier. When I first started on the job, one of my senior product manager, who was actually behind one of the biggest project the product we wanted to launch, was about to leave the company. And I went to the CEO and I says, I'm not gonna lie, yeah, if this guy leaves, just say goodbye. Just add another year on this product, because I
wow.
don't think there's anybody that is worked with close enough to pick up the
Mm,
discussion, the conversation. You can bring someone else as senior, yes, but the impact will be bigger than you think. So my job was to show that person, because I told them, just give me 2-3 months. And if I honestly can't change anything, I'd be happy for you to leave. Right.
yeah.
So we worked together, and I'm happy to say they stayed for another 2 years before
Wow.
he left.
Wow.
And whilst we were working together, again, going back to influencing, I could see him shift. He come to work and says, "Oh my God, it's lovely to come to work without having to worry about what marketing is going to say, right?
Mm,
Without having to worry about whether the director of marketing
yeah.
will come and shout at me." And just those kind of comments are things that you start seeing around the team, and even on the marketing side,
Yeah.
those comments, eventually people talk about that. They will
Mm,
talk about that in the kitchen. It will go back to management, and senior
positivity.
management will be able to see what's going on.
Mm,
And if you work in a positive culture,
mm,
they have to take the right actions.
mm,
Once I work in a team where that point I was the client facing, so leading the project management. But again, when you work on a scale up, like I've told you before, you are the
yep.
mom, the dad, the auntie, the uncle. I was doing
Everything.
account management, product management, writing the requirements. I was even doing solutioning of the for the engineers. I was actually doing everything.
Wow.
And it got to the point where one of my engineers working on my team to deliver the projects was always making mistakes. And
Mm.
I try my best. I try the gentle things. I even started creating workshops to train my own team, because obviously some of them are young. I understand they might not know how to deal with clients. I
Yeah.
created the workshop, and this is how you manage clients. And I went to my boss and says, can I run this workshop for all the engineers that are client facing? Because I know that other project manager had the same issues. So I did, everything that I thought I could to help. But his performance was always poor. And when he makes mistake, and one day he made a mistake that brought the platform down
Whoa.
for over 2 days. And
Whoa.
that company was doing transaction all over the world. So
Yeah.
there were clients calling them up. And I was like, oh my God, the product owner that I used to work with was on holiday. So he was a calm one. And his boss was on holiday as well.
Wow.
And he called me, and luckily by that time, I already improved at least the working relationship. So we actually liked each other. So he
Mm.
called me and says, oh, Nelly, I'm in my hotel. My wife is looking at me. She's really mad at me now because I'm actually picking up the phone. And I told him, don't worry, just go back. I will
Focus.
handle it.
Mm.
But then when we start looking at what happened, it was a very basic error. I mean, that mistake was so basic that it took us more than half a day to figure out what went wrong. I got
You
the
never
leader of
think.
the engineer client facing jumped in. I got the engineers that actually built the product to go in. I was like, look,
Wow.
we just got the point where we didn't. And it got to the point where I came to him and says, okay, can you just show me step by step what you've done? Because
Mm.
we've tried every single thing. And when he showed me what he did, he missed one simple step, a crucial one that you couldn't just miss there.
Wow.
And that point, that's when, going back to what do? I just went to my boss and I said, I love this project. I love working on this. But I've been reporting this. This is like the fourth time that I come to you as management and say, this person is just not helping. And now look at the result of what we've done. This is the
Mm.
impact on clients in terms of how much time we've made.
Money.
This is the impact on the company in terms of all of these engineers that we don't
True.
even have
Yep. Yep.
resources, right?
Yep.
They were on this. This is the impact. Again, going back to statistics and data is always good to deal with stakeholders. And again, in this point, the problem was with someone and I couldn't do anything. So I got all of the information, the statistics, the data, and I went to the senior level of management and says, I'm going to leave you with this. And quite frankly, there's nothing more than I can do. Either you find a way for his own manager to handle him and teach
Mm.
him and train him the right way, or I don't want him on the project. And if you are going to let me keep him on a project, because again, that's not for me to say, I
To
get
decide.
whatever I'm given, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to make sure that every single time there's a problem, I will come back here because I know I call myself the Mary Poppins of startups, but there's a
I
limited
mean.
amount of magic that can come from a toolkit. And I think I've used all the magic I can. And right now, it's
Yeah.
up to you to really face this on and don't
Fix
just
it.
rush it under the carpet. Otherwise, a lot of people are struggling, not just me, not just my projects, not just my
Mm.
project team or my product team, but the impact is
Yep.
actually company wide now.
Mm. Wow. That's something. I mean, there's sometimes that things just go out of hand and you need to find other resolution means basically after exhausting all the magic in your toolkit. You have to leave it to the powers that be. Yeah, so I was going to just water it down for the benefit of those that are not in the
Mm,
product space or active
mhm,
product management, but maybe are involved in businesses, entrepreneurship,
mhm,
startups in one way or the other. When you have a product that you are selling
mhm,
out to your customers, and
mm,
you in a bid to be customer centric or user
yeah.
centric, you want to involve them in the whole process, and then you realize that they are just being difficult users or difficult
Yeah.
customers asking for, someone coming to ask you for a hologram in WhatsApp as a feature, or asking things that
Mhm,
are unrealistic. And these are people that have maybe some level of influence to tilt the scale out of your favor when it comes to market adoption or something around your revenue
mm,
streams. How would you sort of balance what they are asking you and how to retain them? Because you know what they're asking is really unrealistic. It's outright
mhm,
unrealistic. It's a balloon shot. But you want to retain such customers. You want to meet their needs, their fundamental needs. How do you sort of balance up that skill?
mm. That's a very, very good question. And in fact, this some of this advice is actually quite general, and I should have started with that. Is
Mm,
whenever I start working on the project or on the product or whatever it is, and I meet those kind of resistance, whether through, I mean, all of the stories that I've told you so
Yeah.
far, my biggest goal is to find two people. One, the friendliest person, an ally that will help me to navigate the culture of the organization, navigate the market, or
Mm,
someone that I know is passionate about the kind of work or the product that we're building, and they will be our cheerleaders.
mm,
And the second one, I find the most difficult person, like for example, the one you've mentioned, because with the difficult people, they, as much as we do have a tendency to avoid them because it's just hard work.
true.
And at the end of the day, what we are talking about, we're not even looking at what's happening in the freaking product team.
True.
And
True.
that's a lot of issues.
True.
In addition to that, you have this entire world that you have to deal with.
Mm,
Yet, when you run away from difficult people at the beginning, you miss a big opportunity.
mm,
Even if you have a stakeholder or a client voice, potential client voice that is very difficult, if they are respected in the market, you know that by the time they jump in and embrace what you said, a lot of people will be convinced much quicker.
mm.
What we tend to look at the skeptics. If it is a skeptic, someone who was like, oh no, I want this, I want this. The moment you make them happy and satisfied, other people will go like, what? If this skeptic is going
Yeah,
for this,
that's true.
I need to go as well. I don't want to miss out, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
this is why the first thing I really wanted to say, always find two people and get them to help you. So the difficult one, as you said, we already identified them. So what I will do in that sense, I will also try to find if in the group what is it's kind of like the customer voice or whatever voice of the customer, whatever
yeah.
you call that group of people. Is there anyone that also has a lot of influence that can be my ally to help convince the other person?
Mm,
So I will kind of get them together so that when there's a discussion, I can bring both voices together so that people can hear also the positive one that comes from the other one. But then when it comes to features and people don't ask quite a lot, I always try to go back to, I guess, some of the questions that they were talking about when we first met, we were having a drink in Cambridge was,
yeah.
the why, what, how,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
why? Why do you want this feature? Why do you want this feature, and how is this feature going to help you and your company? What would happen if we don't produce this? Is there something else that we could do instead?
Mm,
And again, if there's a level of trust there, you can also be very open about this. Okay, we would like to do this, but for us, we are putting a business case for this. We want you to kind of come and help.
mm,
I find that people are very quick to judge, but very few people wants to join. But having
mm.
said that, someone who has a strong voice, when they're being asked to join, even just help us create this business case, help us dive deeper. Here are some of the challenges that we have. How can we overcome this, right? And bringing them in the conversation, in the way, even if it's like a one-off workshop, yes, you might say it's a waste of time, but first, as a product manager, I genuinely believe in listening to people because you
Mm.
might have ideas that you
Yeah.
don't have. And if they are very particular about those features and you bring them to this kind of discussion, it's just a midway that you can find, or maybe something completely different that you never thought about, right? So bring them on board. But of course, the most important thing is to be very clear when it comes to expectations. This workshop doesn't mean that tomorrow you will see a hologram.
True. 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 True.
This workshop is to help us understand your needs,
Mm.
why it's so important, and for you to understand some of the limitations that we have. Of course, I'm not telling you to say all of the trade secrets of the company,
Yep.
but it's just something that you can share that shows them that we really want to work with you. We
Mm.
listen. Do you want to try our product the way it is? Try it the way it is. Okay. With that feature, we've tried to do X, Y, Z. Can you please try it and let us know your thoughts? Will that be enough? Or, those kind of things where you can, in a way, massage their ego,
And
because at the
build
end of the day, ego is
confidence. Yep.
such a huge thing for people. Yes, build confidence, but at the same time, use that difficult person as a way of also testing, improving, and then also use your ally to help you as well with that person.
Influencing. Wow, that's beautiful, really. That is, you're using their difficulty to your advantage, basically. And
Yes.
I think once you're able to crack through that difficult person's barrier and build confidence, build trust in you, they begin to trust you and believe and follow you and understand, beginning to come around. I think, like you said, others around them would say, if this person can, you know, bring down their barricades and follow suit, then it's a strong influencing factor for them to also follow in line, you know. So I think that's very important. While having allies can help with influencing those difficult people, once they have finally realized how much value you're giving them and they are falling in line, everyone else is more likely to get influenced more easily than if it were to be just an ally that does that. So you mentioned something very briefly, and before I move on, for the audience, if you have any questions, please do drop them on the chat. But I'm going to give the opportunity for maybe one or two persons to ask a question after this question that I'll be asking Nelly because we are pressed for time. You mentioned something around managing their expectation. How do you do that basically? Do you give timelines? Because I find that when you give timelines to people, they are on your neck basically and waiting
Yes.
and waiting. So, but you also want to give them a sense of what to look forward to. Maybe you are selling something and people have asked for an improvement. Maybe people are buying the iPhone product and they've asked for an improvement that they want cameras, they want this kind of resolution on the camera and all of that, but you know that these are high paying customers, right? They have influence on your products revenue stream, they have influence on your market
Yes.
adoption, they have influence on your reach basically, because these are people that once they enjoy your product they can refer you to other people that will improve your reach. So you want to be able to please them, but you know your limitation, like you also said, you acknowledge your limitation as a company, but you want to be able to meet their expectation. So
Yeah.
how do you manage that flow where you're able to give them something to look forward to, yet manage their expectations such that you do not disappoint them at the end of the day?
Yeah. And I agree with you. That's it's always tricky. I especially one of the things that I don't like, but I know it's also very important coming from a software engineer is dates and timelines. You know, building a product, especially from when you start looking at the level of coding, a lot of people think that coding, you know, it's very logical. Yes, it is. But I also see that a little bit creative and is an art. You never know when problems are going to come.
Yep.
And when they do appear, it could be something that can solve in one day or even
Mm,
much longer.
yep.
But at the same time, you can't turn every project into a research study, right? We
Mm,
need to deliver
deliver.
something.
Yep.
So I find that it's very difficult sometimes when it comes to managing expectations and people who want timelines. Unless I know for sure that something is going to happen, is because the team is actively working in its sprints. What I love to do, depending of course on the product mapping and the next few sprints, when it comes to people external, I try to go for quarters. If I
Mm,
really have to give a date, because again, you know, as much as I say that timeline frustrates me, but
mm,
I'm a project manager, a lead team, a product manager. We need timelines because the
true.
people outside of us, you know, as I've mentioned before, a sales team, when they go out to sell, they need to know what's in the pipeline so that they can entice potential customers, not just based on what we currently have,
Mm,
but potentially from what is coming up.
exactly.
So if a client has asked a feature that says, oh, we've got this, we're looking into this in next quarter, or maybe in 2 quarters from now or towards the end of the month,
Yep.
the year, that can help them. So the
Mm,
first thing I do is if there's a very, because obviously when you do the grooming of the stories or the epics, you already know why certain features needs to be built and whether those features are based on the technical aspect of what we need, whether it's based on technical depth or whether it's based on
mm,
the fulfilling a certain business need, whether the
criteria.
business need is clients ask for this or more revenue, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that already helps you know what the priorities are. So if someone needs a feature, I think the best way of doing that is definitely if you can use quarter, you can, you know, if they want to say, okay, then for the next 6 months, we are tackling these issues.
Mm,
And then after that, we are prioritizing yours, but we will keep you updated as we go forward.
mm,
So for me, it's really important to kind of give them, if you know, let them know. If not, just use a priority status kind of thing. So for us, we think that this is a priority one. Because
mm,
of what we're currently working on, we are doing it now, but we can reassure you that is a priority one issue. So when we are coming up, when we're looking at the next cycle, we are already looking into how we're going to do this.
wow.
So I think that's something that I like to do. If you tell them we are going to do it exactly on this particular month, unless you show that this is going to happen based on the velocity of the team, based on what's currently been happening, based on the current sprints or the next two, however long your sprints are, so the
Yeah.
next block of sprints, I would say, then yes, go ahead and do that. If not, then yes, do keep it as a very high level. Give them an indication. First of all, they want to know that it's important. We're going
Mm-hmm.
back to people wanting to be heard. So priority helps them with that. And secondly, they need to roughly know when to expect that, maybe because they might have to do some more work to use your products. So if you know when the priority falls, yes, do let them know. If not, tell them it's after Q2 this year, or maybe this is something that we are prioritizing for next year. And
Wow.
again, saying why is always important for people if you can, because you can't say that to everybody.
Yeah.
But depending on the importance of the client,
Yeah.
this is why you bring on account management on site, so that you give them as much as information, whether you join the call or not, because you probably have 1,000 things to do. But at least if the account managers can help you push the same messaging across, so that sales and product work together, that can also help you to keep them happy. And obviously, usual updates will never hurt.
Wow, wow, wow. Updates, keeping them informed as things progress. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's very, very key in managing the stakeholders. And one thing you said is about doing the high level timeline, because if you are
Mm-hmm.
very, very specific, people can just be breathing down your neck, coming
Yeah,
at you every time, and you risk over-promising and under-delivering, and
yeah.
at the end of the day, you're losing very valuable customers. But I think being able to give like high-level timelines and prioritizing, basically saying this comes first, this is more important to you, this is your benefit from getting this done first, this is the benefit from getting this
Mm-hmm.
done second, just giving them that
Mm-hmm.
order sort of helps them understand that what they are requesting for is important, and you are bearing that in mind. I think at the end of the day, the goal is to maybe overpromise and over underpromise and over deliver, because that way you
Yes.
keep your customers happy. And I'm very
Mm.
enthused in what you're doing. Thank you very much, Naili. At this point, I'm just going to ask if anyone on the call, we've got a few people on the Zoom call, has a question to ask you. And yeah, otherwise, I would have to move. So if you've got any question, being on the Zoom call, you have the opportunity to ask Nelly. And otherwise, I would just say, what would be your advice to people who, in one way or the other, interact with difficult stakeholders? And by people, I mean people in the product space, people that have just
Mm-hmm.
gotten a new job in a new employment space, maybe the environment it's toxic or whatever it is, or they are in a new culture where they are not very conversant, like where you were, where she was saying
Mm-hmm.
your tone was being rude or something, or they are selling something new to maybe they're selling commodities to their customers, and how would you what would you advise them to do? Like a final word for anyone that works with stakeholders that are
Mm-hmm.
proving difficult, could be their boss, could be their other people that they need input from in their organization, or their customers that are buying their products at the end of the day. What's your advice for them?
So my final advice would be work on developing your own emotional intelligence and leadership skills, regardless of whether you are a leader in the sense of the word. In one way, product managers are leaders. This is what I call leading without authority. You can't fire anybody, you can't hire anybody. People are given to you, and you need to make it happen. But it's still a form of leadership. And
Mm,
regardless of where you work, I mean, even when I started as a software engineer, I wasn't really leading anybody, but I understood what it means by positively influencing people through my work, through my messaging, through the way you build relationship and so much. And even I believe strongly in that even though my work is very technical, right? I very technical, can be quite demanding as well.
mm,
But one of my tagline, and I always end my podcast with that. My podcast is on YouTube, so it's called The Mary Poppins of Startups.
yep,
But if you find Athena Leaders or just search my name, I'm sure there'll be something coming up.
yep.
And in my podcast, I always end the session with, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together, right?
Mm,
And all of those words for me is what we need to be able to enjoy our work. Our work should be a playground,
True.
right? It's not about giving free foods or
Mm.
not about playing video games. Again, I work for tech companies. For me, playing video games at work, I've done that so many times. But that's not why I go to work. I
Yeah.
go to work to know that I enjoy my job as an engineer. I enjoy my job as a product manager. I enjoy my job, whatever that is. And the one way we can do that, bearing in mind that there's always going to be difficult people or difficult situations.
Mm.
The more you learn and improve your own emotional intelligence, the more resilient you become.
Mm.
And the more resilient you become, things that you develop a stronger, tougher skin, which means that you don't take things personally and help you cope and continue better.
Mm.
Sometimes, like I've said, in a situation where someone was rude to me, the way I reacted and the way I handled this whole thing will then gain me more respect, and I will actually influence other people because I avoided direct confrontation
Mm.
when I needed to. But when it was the point where you have to go for direct
Yep.
confrontation, I did
Go
that as
for
well.
it. Yeah.
Because sometimes when people talk about emotional intelligence, they feel like, oh, well, you just have to go on with things. No, no. It's
Mm.
about knowing when to smile or when to meet someone's tone or
Mm.
negative attitude, but I don't stay there. I will bring you back. When they
Mm.
go low, I go high. That's it.
Mm.
But if I have to meet you at your lowest, I still won't be at your low. I will kind of go a little bit high, but I will meet you there and
Yeah.
then I will bring you up high with me as well.
Mm.
So, yes, learn how to develop your emotional intelligence, understanding people's personality types. Again, like I call the map of the world. I read a lot, or I read a lot about NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, which is really, really important. Help you understand how you think, how you react is also very important. I know
Mm.
when I'm frustrated. I know when I'm likely to lash out. What situation makes me want to lash out? Which means that knowing that when I'm in the situation, in the intense pressure, I can breathe and say, okay, maybe this is when I need to leave this room. Or maybe,
Mm.
okay, I'm just going to tell them I'm going for a drink. And
Yeah.
then I go to the bathroom quickly, do a bit of a dance or whatever I need to, zone myself back in
Yeah.
and go back in a meeting. So the emotional intelligence is not just for them, but it's also for you to be able to continue to cope. One of the examples or imagery I love to say, think about being Neo, in the Matrix. So things come at
Mm.
you and you need to kind of learn how to dodge.
Dutched,
But
yeah.
sometimes you have to go and shoot and go through it as well.
True,
So
true,
it
true.
depends on the balance of what you have to do.
Wow, wow. Learning to improve your emotional intelligence, building a very tough skin.
Yeah.
When people go low, you go high, and sometimes you
Yeah.
have to go a less higher point just to be able to meet them and bring them back up. Yeah, I think that is very, very solid, and it resonates strongly with me. Wow, you've shared a lot, and I can't even begin to recap it. I would have to go and listen to this podcast again so that I can sort of get the best of all that you've said. And yeah, I
Mhm.
cannot appreciate you enough for your time being here. And guys, do check out her podcast on YouTube.
Mhm.
There are lots of nuggets, whether you're in the startup ecosystem, whether you're an entrepreneur or a product manager, whatever space you are in, as long as you sell something. I think everybody sells something. As long as you
Yes.
sell something, you need to listen to our podcast. Lots of learning points to pick up from there. Yes, so I think this brings us to the end of today's episode, and it's really thrilling to hear you speak and draw from your experience. And I just want to thank you for your time and being here to share from your wealth of knowledge. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining and for listening to this podcast. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Nelly.
you. Thanks, Joshua.
Cheers.